Hi, welcome to Les Do Books. I'm Tara, and you can email me at tara@thelesbianreview.com with any questions or comments. Or you can come join our Facebook group, the Lesbian Review Book Club. Our June book club book will be Who's Your Daddy by Anne McMahon and Salem West from Bywater Books. And in this episode, we're talking about this month's book club book, Just Like That by Karin Kallmaker from Bella Books. Sheena, founder at the Lesbian Review, is here with me. This episode might have spoilers. I guess they usually don't. But if you're concerned about that, you can still pause, read the book. It's really not that long. You definitely should read it because it's wonderful, and then come back and listen to this episode. Sheena, welcome.
Thanks, Tara.
Let's talk about this book.
I think we did a good job of spoiling it last time, so, props to us.
Yeah, we did. Although I also wonder, how do you... This feels like a strange book to talk about, only because it's a rewrite of Pride and Prejudice. So, all the main beats of the story are really, really famous already.
You can spoil it, though. There's a moment in particular, which I'm going to be talking about, between two main characters and an event on the boot of a car.
Yeah!
Bonnet of a car, rather.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, but first, for the few of you that go ahead and listen to these anyway without having read the book, we're going to tell you a little bit about what it's about. So after 4 years in France, Sarah Ardani is back in California working at her family's vineyard. She's trying to learn how to make things work, learning the business of it, and how to actually make their really high quality, wonderful wines. And at the beginning of the book, she's hanging out with her best friend, Jane Lucas. Jane tells her that there's this wealthy lesbian, Missy Bingley, who's just moved into the neighborhood. She has purchased Netherfield. And Jane thinks, maybe this is going to be the love of her life, which of course is a shock to Sarah, who's like, you've been a player for your whole life. What do you mean you're going to settle down with this one woman who you've never seen and just have a hunch about? But as Sarah is trying to learn the business, one of the things that she finds out actually is that thanks to some bad decisions that her father made, it's actually going into receivership, which is not good. So there's a corporate turnaround specialist who is being sent there to try to fix their books and make it profitable so that the shareholders are happy. And it turns out that is Missy's best friend, Tony Blanchard, who unfortunately the day before Sarah meets her, sees her make a real mess of herself at a dance where she gets wicked, wicked drunk. And for Tony's part, she's quite happy to get the hell out of New York because she had a really nasty breakup with her girlfriend, Myra Wickham, who was taking advantage of her and just kind of horrible. And so she's like, you know what? Maybe it's a good time to go deal with that vineyard issue in California. And if she's lucky, maybe it's going to be close to her best friend, Missy. So she goes down there and she expects to see the same kind of mismanagement issues that kill business after business. And Sarah is exactly that irresponsible, entitled person that she expects to see with these cases, except it actually turns out that she's not. And maybe there's something there. So that's a overly wordy description of that book. Who did you love the most in it, Sheena?
Sarah's father, without a doubt, was my favorite character in this book.
Yeah, why is that?
Because he was just the nicest, sweetest human being. And I just felt so bad for him because the only reason he went into problems with his business was because some arsehead came and convinced him that this was the right move when in fact it wasn't. And he's not really business minded, but he has such a feel for the grapes and the way he talks about the wine and the process, and it's in his blood. And he's just such a nice man. His heart is so open to everybody. And I was just like, this man, he's the kind of person that everybody should have as a father or grandfather.
As long as he's not managing their money.
Indeed.
Oh, he is lovely, though. Although, I did think it was interesting that he kept kind of hanging on to the business side of things, even though she was saying, let me help. I want to learn this. If I'm going to take this over, and I need to do it. And I wonder if she would have spotted things any sooner, or...
I think what Kallmaker did so brilliantly was that relationship was expose the real battle between parents and children. Parents really struggle to see their children as grown up, even when they are grown ups, even when they have degrees, even when they can spot things in a business that the parents can't necessarily.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I actually speak from personal experience on this. I worked with my grandparents in a business, and for them to take me seriously was a real uphill battle, because even though, I came from a space of knowledge and I could show them my discussions and my arguments as to why we should do things in a particular way, they really struggled to see me as anything beyond the granddaughter. Mm-hmm. So perhaps for me this was a very personal relationship, and I got it. I understood that. And I think Kallmaker did it brilliantly.
Yeah, that's good. I quite liked Jane, actually. I thought she had a lovely transformation, and she did great kind of playing the best friend role and doing that. Like, she is a little bit the Sister Jane in Pride and Prejudice, and she's a little bit Charlotte Lucas. And I kind of liked that, conflating the two characters there. I think it worked really well, so that she was more confident than maybe the Sister Jane was, but not saddled with a complete mess. Like, Charlotte Lucas ends up in the book married to Mr. Collins. So I thought that was really good. But what did you think of the two main characters? What did you think of Tony and Sarah?
Oh, I loved them. I thought Tony is the typical dark and brooding hero that you see in these sorts of classic romances. Not a woman of many words, as you would expect, and up against Sarah with her feisty, she almost acts before she thinks about it, and so the two characters juxtapose each other beautifully and create this magic tension that I just love about romances.
And I think they do make, like, I can't, because I know that this is a rewrite of Pride and Prejudice, and in a way it's almost like a translation, which I suppose is me jumping ahead into how we feel about the writing style. But I feel like they're pretty good, faithful representations of who the essences of Elizabeth and Darcy are, but in ways that make sense for where we're at today. And the only other time I've seen that done as well as this is actually a web series, which is, I mean, unfortunately straight. There's not nearly enough lesbians in it because I don't think there are any. But it's called the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and it's done as if Lizzie Bennet had a web show, and it was really cool. And it's this idea of, and I guess I will take this into the writing style, and what I loved about this is that it works almost like a translation. Like, it's not just a straight rewrite, so it doesn't necessarily have all of the same characters, and it doesn't necessarily have all of the same plot points. And guess what? We don't need them because we're not in the early 1800s anymore. Sarah didn't need 4 sisters. Like, I think it was a really good, brilliant choice to make her an only child. Wickham not only didn't have to be a man, because, I mean, obviously there was a lot of gender swapping with this, but I liked that it wasn't Wickham going after Darcy's little sister, because who cares? Why is that necessary? The, like, running off and eloping. That's not something that resonates right now. Trying to, like, fleece Tony, like, get as much money as she can, and also try to hit her where she can when she realizes that Tony quite cares for Sarah. That does resonate, and it makes sense, and it gives her that same essence of what a dastardly, horrible person this Wickham is. And I thought that just held up beautifully. What about the writing style worked for you? Because I know you were quite a big fan of it.
Man, Kallmaker just writes. She makes pretty words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every time in a way that's different. How about that? Like, yes. Do you feel like any two of her books are the same?
No. Well, okay. She's got a very specific style, but what she does is she adapts that style to the story she's telling and the sort of essence of that story. And so what happens is that it creates an overall feeling for that book that isn't the same as a feeling for the next book, right? But she definitely does have... See, I lack the brilliant ability that she has to put things into words. So I'm going to say, very simply, Kallmaker writes pretty words.
She sure does. I guess the thing that I find, because obviously I came to reading Kallmaker a lot later than you did. And I think it was with Roller Coaster maybe, where I got to the end and I was like, I have that really satisfied feeling of reading an excellent romance. But I don't feel like I took the same path that I usually do to get to that feeling. And then the next book that I read by her, was quite different, but I had that same feeling at the end. So I feel like she writes many paths to that same incredibly satisfied feeling, but because it is a different path to get there, I also have that, oh my God, this is something new and fresh and exciting, even if it was written more than 10 years ago.
Well said.
So
Her work doesn't date really. Like there's some references to telephones and things which would date, but only slightly. Her overall stories, arcs, and they don't date because she doesn't write a formulaic beat by beat book, which is I think what you were trying to say a minute ago. It's not. The thing is, as much as I love some of the other romance authors, and there's some big names in lesfic, they feel very often like it's the same story, but just with different characters and maybe a different setting.
Yeah.
Kallmaker's books never feel the same. Each journey is entirely unique.
Mm-hmm.
In short, I agree with you.
Thank you. I think the only thing that could kind of sort of feel a little bit dated, and I actually think is deliberate, is some of the language that the characters use when they're talking just feels a little overly formal for how people would talk now. But I actually think that works brilliantly because it brings in a lot of the feel of Pride and Prejudice without having to actually bring in any of the real dialogue. Because I think when people take the original text, because it's so old that, I mean, it's not under copyright. Like, anybody can take it and do whatever they want with it, which is how you get, like, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and which actually is a book that I read, and some other ones where they actually take the original text and they edit that and like add in their new scenes and maybe take out some other scenes. And I don't feel like those ever work quite right because nobody is Jane Austen. And nobody can write like Jane Austen. Nobody now has the same historical context that she had as she was writing. So I think that bringing in the spirit of it worked so well in this book and made me love it in a way that most others just don't.
I agree. But Kallmaker's quite brilliant in that she'll do that. She'll give a nod to the original work, but not in a cheesy way, in a way that works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Although I did like that it opened with that line about a single woman with a great fortune being in want of a wife or whatever it was.
But how could it not?
Really nice.
Yeah, like pulling in those kind of iconic moments and doing it in a way that just works so well. So, what were your favorite parts or favorite thing? What were your pros? Basically, what were your pros? Whether it's parts or characters or whatever's.
My pros is everything. Everything. Loved it.
That's a lazy pro. I say as somebody who uses that same lazy pro in all my reviews.
It is a lazy pro, but it's a very truthful pro. I will read you what I wrote in my review, okay, under my pros. Every paragraph, every line, every word.
All right, that's pretty good.
Those are my pros.
I'm gonna steal that sometime for a book that I like totally love. I always feel like when I'm writing reviews, though, by the time for books that I love, I'll talk so much in the characters and writing style sections that by the time I get to the pros, I just want to say, like, just go read that other stuff I read.
I totally get that. I do.
What about that hood of the car scene you were going to talk about?
Yes, I just want to mention a con first. My only con with this book is I don't like the cover. It's not a bad cover per se, and it's a very typical Kallmaker cover, but what I don't like about it is it doesn't attract the attention it should for the brilliance that it is.
So, do you think that is partly because of when it came out? Like, was there some sort of a conscious effort at that point to not make the books look too lesbian so that it would be more acceptable to sell them or something?
It's definitely about when it came out, because this is definitely an older book. I don't know exactly which year it came out offhand.
I think it was about 10 years ago.
2005. It was released in 2005. I think back then it was kind of a woman's fiction type vibe going on with cover design and stuff, rather than now there's much more like a movie poster type vibe with books. So something that's going to catch your eye, that's going to sell it to you straight off, rather than this is a kind of a woman's fiction thing. So I think covers definitely need to be updated for books as good as this, that can still be very relevant in today's, reading circles. So that's my con, is the cover.
Yeah. You know what? That I 100% agree, and I think it would be great if I would say like all the big lesfic companies, it might be worth them going back and taking a look at their covers that are more than 5 years old. And just because if you look at the covers now that are coming out, they're so much more beautiful. I mean, they're not all fantastic, but like I would say all the companies are putting out better covers now than they were 5 years ago for sure. And 10 years ago, oh my god.
Yes, there are brilliant covers coming into play now, but there's also the laggers, and I wish the laggers would take a look at what is actually happening in the genre, because I'm guaranteeing you that the guys with the better covers are selling more, even if it's written, as well as the guys with the bad covers. I'm guaranteeing you there's more sales on those.
Yeah, without question. Amanda Radley did that Lesfic survey that she's been compiling, like the reader survey, and she's compiling data about that, and she shared some kind of early results. And I think it was surprising that covers actually played more into it than I think people realized. And there kind of is no excuse for bad covers at this point. There are fabulous designers for hire. I mean, Anne McMahon is killing it so much. All of her covers in the last year have uniformly been gorgeous. And she's not just doing them for Bywater. I mean, she does them for Bywater for sure. They're her publisher. But she's doing them, like she's doing Georgia Beers' covers now, and her one that's coming out in December, gorgeous. Her one that just came out in March, also gorgeous. And other self-published authors are hiring her. And there are other designers for hire. And there are sites that sell inexpensive pre-designed book covers. Like there's no excuse anymore for like badly drawn people that look like fembots, or I don't know, like it just there's no excuse anymore.
I was actually going to say exactly that. I was going to say, if you're unsure, just go hire Anne McMahon. Like 6 months ago, I thought she's hit her peak with some beautiful covers, but now she's producing covers that are even better than 6 months ago. I'm astounded. I just saw the one. It's like a wooden chair or something on a.
The one she just announced this week.
Yes.
Which obviously won't be this week when people are listening to it, but for context, Anne McMahon is taking a short story that she wrote in Sidecar, and I believe I said in my review, oh my god, this needs to be a full-length novel, and I think I'm not the only one who said it, because she's turning it into a full-length novel, and she released the cover, and I just started like drooling, because I was like, I want this book right now.
But that's exactly it. I didn't even have to know what the story was about to want the book, right? Because it's that good. And this is the importance that covers play. So I think, the thing is, there's people like me who know Kallmaker really well, because when we first discovered Lesfic, she was one of the giants in the industry. She's a stable writer. Like, she always produces really good books. And so she was a go-to for me. I just bought everything I could get my hands on with her. So there are people like me, but then there are people like you, and you only really sort of came into discovering Kallmaker because I kept harassing you to read Kallmaker.
Yeah. And I only started reading Lesfic, let me think, how old is my kid? Because I started reading it when I was pregnant with her. So I probably started reading it 5 or 6 years ago. And at that point, there was more choice. And even now, there's way more choice than when I started reading it. So when you have that much that's available, unless you have someone like Sheena or me that's saying you need to read this favorite book of mine despite the cover that's underwhelming, those books may not get picked up.
And the thing is, because she had such a big hiatus in her writing, there were several years between publishing, she dwindled in the Lesfic scene, right? And she's coming back now. She's writing now, and she released a book last year. She's going to release another one soon. But the thing is, her work is so good that it should not be forgotten in the Lesfic scene. It really shouldn't. And Bella needs to go back and relook at her covers and remarket her, because there's a whole generation of people who are reading Lesfic that don't know her.
Yeah. And if I were advising Bella, as if they care what I think, but still, if I were advising Bella, I would say pick like 4 or 5 of the best ones to start with, because the only other, it's a wonderful problem to have, But the problem with an author like Karin Kallmaker is that their backlist is so vast that it can be overwhelming. So you don't actually know where to start. So it would almost be like are you new to Karin Kallmaker? Start here. And those are the ones where like do those brand new, highly designed, gorgeous covers that are going to entice readers to pick them up.
Agreed. And just like that is the perfect place to start if you want to start with Kallmaker. So start there. Because it's really a good book. One way or another, whether you love Pride and Prejudice or whether you don't, need to read this. You just need to read this if you love lesfic that's written well with a good romance.
But actually, if you do love Pride and Prejudice, and if you've been burned, if you love adaptations of, or if you keep hoping for a good adaptation of a classic book, and you've seen so many bad ones that you're almost afraid to jump in because you've been burned by bad ones, this is actually one you shouldn't be afraid of, because it's a fabulous adaptation that's relevant, that holds up, and is done in a way that absolutely makes sense. But yeah, I think you're right. I think even if you've never read it, even if you don't know anything about it, you're still going to get something that you enjoy here. There's still going to be something to love because there are a lot of fantastic, rich characters, wonderful dialogue. Who doesn't want to read about a vineyard and skinny dipping and things that happen on hoods of a car?
You shouldn't get turned off if you hated Pride and Prejudice. If you were like forced to read it at school and you're like, I don't want to read it in lesfic, don't get turned off by that either, because this is really a great romance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's talk about car hoods, shall we?
Yes. Let's do it.
Okay, so back to prose. This is my absolutely favorite scene in the whole book because it's just...
Mm-hmm.
So... The two main characters are on their way home from somewhere. It's like a party or something.
Yeah.
And they stop the car, and then they're having this argument in the middle of the night and under this beautiful sky in the dark. And they you know, as you do when you are having this incredible argument and you have this massive attraction, as you kind of like jump each other. So there they are, half on the bonnet of the car, doing... Well, you can imagine what they're practically doing. And then they stop.
Yeah.
And just that entire moment is my favorite moment in the whole book because of the way it's written. It's so clear that they're having this very intimate struggle. And yet, I think it's Tony that pulls away. She just can't bring herself to go all the way. Or was it?
Wait, I thought they do go all the way.
Sort of.
Well, one of them does.
One of them goes all the way. But that doesn't really count.
Sure, one of them does. Like, car sex happened. Actually, car sex happens more than once in this book, too.
Does it? When's the other time?
When Tony sleeps with Missy's sister.
Oh, yeah.
In the car. Yeah. Who's always had the... Caroline? Was she? Well, the character is Caroline in the original, and I think she's Caroline in this one too, yeah. When Caroline's like, I don't even care if I can't have you forever, I just want this, and she, for some reason that, anyway, does. Yeah, there's a lot of car sex in this book. More than I would dare say in your average lesbian romance.
Okay, you're right, I forgot about that. But Tony doesn't... Either time, it's always the chick that's with Tony, not Tony.
Yeah. Which actually, I mean...
So this is why I say it doesn't quite count.
Yeah. It totally counts. Come on, man. There are orgasms both times.
No, but remember that this is romance. This is romance we're talking about here.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it feels like, in terms of sex scenes in romance... It's like a half a scene, almost.
Exactly.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
That's really my point here. Poor Tony. Tony's walking around with whatever the lesbian equivalent is of blue balls.
Well, I mean, hopefully she's invested in a good vibrator or something. Sometimes you just gotta take care of yourself. Yeah, you're right. That is a good scene because she's not ready to make herself vulnerable at that point.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
she has a long way to go to open herself to a relationship. But I mean, she got burned so bad by Myra, whatever.
But because she does that, because she pulls away, she hurts. She hurts this
Yes.
potential relationship that they have, this budding forever.
Yeah. Well, is there? It's not. It's. I don't think it's at that point. It's a conversation later on. I was so glad. Like, of all the beats that she brought in from the original, I was so glad that there was that conversation where she was like, I love you. I must be crazy, but I love you. And Sarad's like, you need to get bent, because that is not the way to go about this. Like, I was so pleased because that's one of my favorite scenes in the book. It's one of my favorite scenes in the BBC adaptation with Colin Firth. Like, it's just when Lizzie Bennett and then Sarah as well just kind of gathers all of their self-worth and is like, I am worth so much more than this. You can't expect me to just follow along because you said that you love me. What does that even mean? How can you love me when you hate the people I come from? Like, how? Come on. So, yeah, I think that's fabulous. That's actually not my favorite scene, though.
What is your favorite scene?
My favorite is when Sarah figures out who bought the extra shares or whatever in the vineyard and saves it from, so that the family doesn't lose it. When she has that realization, because Tony is she's a bit of an ice queen, right? Like, I think.
Definitely.
And we know that the Ice Queen has been thawing, but Sarah doesn't know that. She just thinks that she's this too uptight, too closed off, whatever. And when she comes to that realization that, oh, this woman actually really understands what I truly care about and made sure that I can have it in my life. And I just thought that it was beautifully done. And then also that ending. It's a good ending. I felt like it was a good, appropriate ending for who they were. Like, nobody had to... They both changed, but nobody had to give up who they were at their essence or anything like that. And so that ending kind of almost in a place of... It's positive, but in a place of positive compromise, I thought was good. Like, Tony doesn't give up her career.
Yes, I was wondering how she was going to handle that, and I was actually quite satisfied at the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
You call Tony an ice queen, and you know what? It actually hadn't occurred to me till now, because I always saw her as, the old fashioned movie heroes. They're very manly and stoic and not emotional at all, and they're just going to get on with it and save the day, and that's how I was reading Tony.
To be fair, at this point, I think I've reevaluated, and I would call Darcy an ice queen too. In the original book, maybe not that, I don't know, like he's stoic, I guess, but he is very, very closed off, and he has that same kind of, whatever we call the typical thawing the ice queen, I don't know, taming the beast. I guess he's a beast that gets tamed.
Yes, I think you're right.
Yeah. All right, well, do you have anything else that you want to say to our lovely listeners about this wonderful, wonderful book?
Go read it.
Yeah, because if you haven't, why haven't you?
Right.
Come on. We gave you a month. Sheena wrote her review. It's a fabulous review. Everybody should read it.
Tara also wrote a review somewhere. It's also a fabulous review.
Yeah, it hasn't been posted yet, but there will be a review going up at Smart Bitches Trashy Books at some point in the fairly near future, I think. So if you want to check that out, I will tweet it when it's live. But again, the next book club book is going to be Who's Your Daddy by Anne McMahon and Salem West. And if you haven't figured it out by now, that is actually my favorite book. And I'm so excited that one of the reviewers suggested that we read this together. So that's what we're going to do. Don't forget to join us at our Facebook group, the Lesbian Review Book Club, so you can talk to us about Just Like That and anything else you're reading and loving. You can also find me and all the other podcasters on the Lesbian Talk Show channel at our Facebook group, the Lesbian Talk Show chat group. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to rate the show and subscribe. To find this and many other great shows, all you need to do is search for the Lesbian Talk Show on iTunes, Podbean, or Stitcher. Sheena, thank you so much for joining me. This has been Let's Do Books. Don't forget to email me at Tara@thelesbianreview if you have any questions or comments. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Bye. You gotta say bye.
Well, it's too late. I stopped recording. If you have not stopped recording, you can bye. So I don't know what happened, but it looks like it stopped recording for a little bit. So I'm going to save as much as I have and then start recording again. And then I'm going to kill this computer. No, that's not true.
I've got like a burglary happening in there by the sounds of it.
Is it your wife? Because I hear she owns half the place.
Well, this is true, but she has stolen my heart, so...
Oh! There you go! Serenity now! Oh shit, that's gonna be no take.